Hi, I'm Scott Kinville, and welcome to Generally Speaking, the Herkimer College podcast. You know, we started this podcast because we wanted to highlight all the wonderful things that are going on up here on campus. But you know, we also love getting a visit from our alumni. And with us today, we have one such alumni who's gone out into the world and has become a tremendous success, Mr. Patrick Malowski. Patrick, how are you?
I'm doing well, Scott. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I am fantastic, and I'm so glad you're here today because, like I said, we love hearing the stories from the people who went here to Herkimer and who went out and became a big success in the world just like you did. So before we get to that, though, I want to know your road to Herkimer. How did it start, and tell us all about it.
I'm a Herkimer boy through and through. Grew up in Herkimer Elementary School, Herkimer High School. It was a natural progression for me to go to Herkimer College. And I'm one of the fortunate ones who had an idea of what they wanted to do when they grew up. And this college has always been known for its, at the time, radio, television, but multimedia. And I knew that that was the best place for me to go, not just from a standpoint of they had what I wanted, but I knew that that was probably the most affordable path and get the quality education that I needed to create my own opportunities, right? And that was the awesome thing. So I got my start. My first multimedia experience was playing Ken Griffey Jr. baseball on Nintendo 64, recording it on my parents' VCR, and then doing voiceover on the games like I was the announcer and play-by-play announcer for the games. So, and the nice thing was I played the game, so I knew what was coming before that someone swung the bat.
That's okay, though. You got to have a little bit of practice in there, and that is so great. And especially that you mentioned VCR, because we don't hear that anymore.
What's a VCR? And a DVD player, what's that
I know,
too,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe a little bit of Blu-ray, but that's all right.
Yeah. But then I went, and then from there, I started at a Herkimer BOCES course, which phenomenal CTE programs they have there. And that naturally led me here to Herkimer College. So I really took all of the opportunities of higher learning in Herkimer County, and I used them to my full advantage. And I'm very fortunate that they were there for me. And I'm glad that they're still there for people who live in Herkimer County or anyone who wants to come to Herkimer County to utilize.
You know, absolutely. And, you know, people may not realize it, but I mean, this college has such a tremendous history of having a wonderful radio TV program, now a communications and media program. It is such a great place to get your start. It's not going to break the bank. You know, you're not going to end up, $60,000 in debt right off the hop, but it's going to springboard you to much better things in life.
And I tell people this when I tell, that everyone goes, oh, what college did you go to? And I went to Herkimer, and then I went to SUNY Oswego for 2 years, which SUNY Oswego was awesome. But I tell people about Herkimer. I've got a friend who's worked on Wall Street. And I've got a friend who is on tour with music artists that get more than 1 million streams on Spotify. So
Wow.
I look at that and I say, that all happened at Herkimer, right? And it's a mixture, right? It's not just Herkimer's going to make you. Herkimer's going to give you the opportunity to take it and run with it, right? The professors here give you the keys to the castle, but it's your job to explore the castle once you have the keys.
I love that terminology because it's so true. And, it's not just Herkimer, but that applies to pretty much just about anything in life. When you're trying to learn something, people are there to give you the advice. Here's the roadmap, but guess what? You got to travel it.
Exactly. And that was the cool thing. You talked about my road to Herkimer. I really was, had great people like, Professor Gassman, who's here, who really helped guide me in the right direction. But he never said, you must go here. He showed me all the directions that I could go and allowed me to choose which one I wanted to go and supported me as much as he could through that journey. And then passed me off to where I was going next and said, good luck, call me anytime you need me. And he's certainly been there for me plenty of times. The education continues here at Herkimer, even if you're no longer going to Herkimer. And that's the coolest part about this small town community college, is that it cares about you once you leave too.
And you care about it because you came back to talk to us.
Certainly do.
So just for perspective and a timeline, you graduated in 2012.
Yes.
So when you got here to Herkimer, which I'm assuming would be 2010, were you more into the audio end of things, the visual end or video end of things, or both?
I loved both. And a lot of it was, I was working with video in my BOCES course that I was taking at Herkimer BOCES. Shout out to Ryan DeMars, who's also a Herkimer graduate.
Yes,
and
he is.
has gone on to become a wonderful educator. But on top of that, I grew up with two brothers that played music, and I had the good fortune of having awesome instruments around me. Learned to play them, joined a band when I wasn't really too good at playing them. Brothers come back from college and they're like, "You're in a band now? You know how to play guitar?" And so I fell in love with music because of that. So coming up here, it really gave me the opportunity to, be part of the radio station, but then also be part of the TV station. And I want to say this too, because, one thing that a lot of people who are alumni from, I'd say, my time and your time as well, there's this thing, right? You get attached to that radio and TV broadcasting. That means a lot to you, and it means a lot to me too. And there was a time where it hurt, that it was no longer that. But when you look at 2024 in the landscape, that program was not going to work in 2024. And
Right.
what I love about what we're doing right now here with this podcast and in this multimedia studio that's meant to create content to go in multiple places is that this is built for 2024.
Yes.
And that's not to say the education that I got then, it was built for the time that I was here, but it evolved. And that evolution doesn't always look pretty, and that evolution doesn't always go the way you want it to, but that's how it works. You have to roll with the punches. And I feel like this program is doing that, especially with, the professors that they have and the vision that they have for this, and especially the care that they give to the students.
Or to put it in a technical term, nonlinear editing.
Nonlinear editing.
There
Yes.
you go.
Yes.
But it's so true. If you look at the numbers, right? So, I mean, and there's studies about it all over the place. So television really is more or less plateaued as far as it's not going to grow anymore. I mean, how really could it? I mean, it's everywhere, right? Radio, same thing. It's not nowhere near as dominant as it used to be. But if you look at those graphs, guess what's going straight up in the air? It's podcasting. It's social media. And that really is where all this is coming. It's where it's all going.
Yeah, and it's a good lesson too, right? I mean, the idea of like trends and where's it all going, right? And you could have taken a guess where it was going, but I remember when I was in school, people were talking about, radio's really going down. People want a video aspect of things. They don't want to listen to people talk. They want to see people talk. And at the time, that felt so right to think that. But it actually was misguided when you look at how big podcasts are now.
Right.
And that's the cool thing, that you may see a trend, but you really don't know what's going to happen. And that's like my biggest lesson that I think I've learned in my career. Just as an example, when you got out of college, you most likely went to work for a TV station or some sort of some place that makes videos for companies, one-off videos and stuff. Now, my job, I work for a New York State Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, doing multimedia work, social media, video, photography, graphic design work, web work, you name it. But the job didn't necessarily exist when I was getting out of school. And
that was just, 15 years? Not even 15 years ago, 10.
yes, and that's the best thing about Herkimer, is I felt that the professors have that mindset of, we're going to teach you with what exists today, but we need to teach you to be ready for what's coming tomorrow. And I think that that's like one of the greatest lessons that I learned here, is that you can get an idea of where it's going and following the path, but you don't know where it's going. So you need to be ready for whatever that is. And as long as you're working hard and paying attention and have an open mind, I think you do that.
Sure, absolutely. And I mean, especially technology, it's an ever-evolving world. It really is. But, you mentioned, we got the podcast studio, which is awesome. But, at one time, and I want to take a little trip down memory lane, okay? Because at one time, we had a full-blown television studio here.
Yes.
And of course, you, my friend, were an anchor. So what we've got is some footage of Patrick behind the desk, as well as doing a few other things. So we're going to watch a couple videos. And when we get back, we're going to have Patrick tell us what's going on.
Hello, I'm Patrick Malowski, and welcome to 99 News here on HCTV Channel 99. We're here every Thursday afternoon this semester at 1 o'clock with a live 15-minute newscast.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Graduation season is in full swing across the North Country.
We all get that text that, we want to answer back as soon as we can, right? But it goes without saying, you don't text and drive, and this new tool would make it a lot harder to get out of a cell phone ticket if it ever were to hit the streets.
So, Patrick, I got to tell you, that was awesome. Tell us what we just saw.
All right, so the first clip that you saw, that's me anchoring at the HCTV news desk. Very, very green, no pun intended for the Herkimer General Green. Very green, doing what I could at the time. And then what you saw after that is sort of the journey, right? I started here, and then I worked for about 5 years at a TV station in Watertown, New York, the CBS affiliate up there, WWNY, a wonderful TV station, just a hallmark of small television and showing what a good news outlet can do for a community. And I was so fortunate to work there, and I worked with wonderful people who are still there, and that's very rare in television for people to stick around in a small market. You got people who've been there 20, 30 years. So, but I was fortunate to spend time there. And then I was fortunate to spend time in this room too. What is the radio station, but also now the podcast station, if you will.
Right.
So that's a bunch of what you saw there.
So I'm assuming that you went to Watertown right after you were done on Oswego.
Yes, I did.
So tell us a little bit about the process, because that's another thing that we don't always talk about is, once you're done with college, now it's the process of getting the job. So tell us how that all came about.
So I actually want to start in Herkimer a little bit, right? Okay. So because it's a matter of using opportunity, and I was fortunate with skills that I learned here. I kind of got into DJing a little bit, and I used to DJ at the Herkimer Applebee's every Wednesday night. That was now.
Did you have a stage name?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
But my brother would come back, and we would DJ. We would play Factor Crap, and we'd give out prizes to people. It was a good time. We had a good crowd of regulars that would come in, but that was a skill that I utilized. I also had an internship up at Rozier Communications, and what a phenomenal local radio station group that is. And I was able to work there as far as under an internship for a show called Talk of the Town at the time.
It's still going.
Yep. And it's cool to see that going, because I kind of was interning around somewhat the origins of that show. And then I got to work with, everyone who's kind of worked there and learn from them. And then that turned into a job where I was a board operator during the Buffalo Bills football games that were airing at the time there. I would help plug in the local commercials, which was really cool. But I mean, here at Herkimer, I'm already getting jobs based on the connections I'm making, but also the experience that I'm getting here. And then went off to Oswego while I was doing that. It was a mixture of Herkimer and Oswego. I got an internship. I was up at WUTR for a bit. That was awesome. That was fun. And met some wonderful people there who I still talk to, still know, still contact, still talk business with them as far as what are you doing? How did you adapt to this? That. So I've been able to get that pretty much everywhere that I've gone. That's the cool thing in my journey. I've met a lot of good people. Then Oswego was phenomenal. It kind of helped put a bow on what I learned here at Herkimer. But the cool thing about it was I've had a professor there tell me, they said, wow, we get you students from Herkimer, you already know kind of a lot of what we're going to teach. So just kind of bear with us, and we're going to catch everyone else up and get to you. So that was sort of his joke of us who came in, because you got 2 years to teach everybody everywhere. Here, you got 4. And there's something to that. But regardless, Oswego really helped build on what I learned here at Herkimer. And then I went to a TV station in Cleveland, WOIO 19 News. I was fortunate. I had an aunt and uncle that lived out there, and they said, you can ever want to intern here at one of the stations. I got an internship, and that was really cool. Especially I'd never really lived outside of Herkimer or Oswego or small towns before. So I got to live in a city like that. And then my professor in Oswego said, I know you could go to a few different places, but there's this place in Watertown with some very special people I think would be a really good spot for you to start your career. He was able to kind of connect me to get an interview there. I interviewed at a few places, met some wonderful people. There were other places I could have worked that I thought would have been good, but I stepped into that station in Watertown, and there's something very cool about it, and I knew that that's where I needed to be. And, that's scary when you get your first job and you realize, okay, this is where I'm going to put roots for a little while. And I did. And I was there 5 years, and I don't regret one moment of it. I met my wife while doing that. She was a Spectrum News reporter. We met at a city council
No
meeting.
kidding.
Yes. I
Competition turned into love.
Yeah, well, I walked in and the room and, completely professional. It was actually her first city council meeting. And the trick was to get all the sound from the council members is you tape your microphone to the speaker of the entire room. So that way,
Okay.
because there's no way to get sound from
Right,
everybody,
right.
but it's all coming through that speaker. And then you get something that's legible, good enough for the air. And I go to her, you can tell she's like figuring out how am I going to microphone. And I'm like, yeah, you can put your microphone right on that speaker. It'll pick everybody up. And so, she took that tip and she did that. And from there we, over time, that was cool. But I mean, that was awesome. You don't know where life's going to take you. And I know we're talking more career wise, but I thought that was important to note that Watertown is a very special place in my heart, not just for where I worked and the amazing community up there, but I met my wife up there. That's awesome.
You can't beat that.
You can't beat that.
And you went to Oswego for 2 years, so you were ready for those Watertown winters.
I was ready for those Watertown winters. I'll tell you what, though, that Tug Hill is something else, and that's a good time up there in the wintertime if you're ready for it.
That is
Yes.
tremendous. So, I mean, you spent 5 years at this station, and then you went on to your current position. Before we talk about that, I do want to just ask you, what are some of the advice that you would have, having spent that kind of time out in the field, for an aspiring multimedia journalist?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give students now is think outside the box and don't be afraid to fail. While you may think that, there's a certain way that certainly your bosses want things done, but like a good boss, a good supervisor wants you to take chances. A good professor wants you to take chances.
Right.
And as long as you're doing it in good faith and you're not hurting anyone, which, in news can happen if you do things the wrong way. I'm not saying it can't. But take chances on this story. This is a story you can take chances on. I don't want you to come back with something cookie cutter. I want to see, a boss would say to me, I want to see what Patrick Malowski's perspective when he gets out of this. I don't want your opinion, but I do want your perspective. You're the one who brought that camera there and captured all that footage. Let people know your perspective of what you saw that day. And I had to think outside the box. And I think that's important for students to do, because if you can't think outside the box, you're not going to be able to grow. If you're looking for someone to give you your next order, the best thing is to figure out what's going to work, do it, and then watch your supervisors go, oh, that was good.
Right.
And sometimes they're going to come to you and say, hey, that wasn't good, but I'm really glad that you're taking a chance here. But that's what people are looking for. Don't be afraid to fail. You're going to fail.
There's no doubt.
You will
No
fail. But the idea is you learn to pick yourself back up, and that's where your best lessons are. I know that's cliche, but that's the truth of life.
And that's why it's cliche, though, because it's happened so many times and you learn to overcome it. And, what you mentioned, like thinking outside the box, what that does is if you can get that skill down, now when something goes wrong, you're not in like total panic mode because it's not going exactly the way the script's supposed to go. Okay, now how am I going to get around this? And you got to be able to do that in a hurry sometimes, especially, if you're talking about live TV or if you got somebody that's got a limited window for an interview. It's like, okay, if everything's not going correctly, I got to figure out how to get around this.
Yes, and you do, and that happened to me so many times. And you know what, too? Sometimes you're gonna look, sometimes you may look a little scared. Sometimes you may look like you're nervous, right? And I'll say this too, because it is the world. Sometimes you encounter folks like this. There were times where I worked, and it would be a stressful situation, and then you'd come across someone who maybe didn't care as much about it as you did, and maybe they even kind of make fun of the idea of how much you care about it. Don't ever be discouraged by that because you may be someone who cares more than others. Find other people who care as much as you, and that's where you're probably going to make the most magic.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Totally agree. So now you've left the station in Watertown. You're into something a little bit different, but not completely different. Tell us about that.
Yes. So now I'm doing the same type of work. It's the same skill sets, right? Video, writing, social media, content creation, web work, because that's part of being in TV news. I mean, you help run the website, put your stories there. So I do a lot of that work. I've worked in education for a few years with Capital Region BOCES. Loved it there. Such a phenomenal organization. Really went back to the roots of where I learned a lot of my first skills at Herkimer BOCES, and I actually got to make some videos for Herkimer BOCES and for Herkimer High School, and I loved working at Capital Region BOCES. And if anyone's ever looking for a career, that is definitely a place you should look, especially in the communications department. Top notch. But I had found another opportunity that I was excited about, that kind of working in education felt very natural to go into, which was the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. I started doing stories in classrooms, some of the special education classrooms, and I found that that was some of my favorite places to be. Some of my favorite stories were there, of learning and just such wonderful moments happening there. And I, found out about this opportunity. I went for it, and I was fortunate and I got it. And now I work for the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, and I've met some of the best people I've ever met in my life. I've gotten some of the best perspective I've ever gotten in my life. And I feel like I am a more well-rounded person because of the path that I've gone on. And, and I think this is an important thing to point out too. I love video. I love content creation. I love storytelling. But I still don't know where my career is going to go. I sometimes think to myself, there may be a point where I'm presented with this opportunity that, I would have never had unless I followed the road that I went on. But, maybe I'll take it and maybe it'll be different. I don't know. Or I could see myself being 80 years old and being like, what's the best camera for me to carry around at this fair for the next 5 hours so I can get some good pictures? I could see both paths, and I think that that's the beautiful thing about it. I shouldn't know where I'm going yet. I should know where I've been, and I should let that guide me. And I think that's the coolest thing of how I've got there. I've let what I've loved about what I've done here at Herkimer, here in my jobs, get me where I am now. And if someone said, Pat, you're going to spend the next 25 years at OPWDD, the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, I'd say, sounds like a good life to me.
Yeah. And you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. I mean, there's so much truth to that. And one of the great things about this field is you're not just pigeonholed into one thing or another. There are so many different branches that you can go out on. And we talk about this now. Heck, in 10 years, it's probably going to double what the different things you can do. Because we talked about earlier, it used to be just television, radio, that kind of thing. Now you're talking about producing podcasts. You're talking about reels, YouTube videos, stuff like that. And who the heck knows what the future brings?
No, that's the beauty of it. Who knows where it's all going to go? But the things that have stayed true, they've evolved a bit, and you've had to learn new tactics and stuff. But people are looking for something that makes them feel, right? They're looking for something that makes them feel emotional, right? I mean, you look at some of the old scary movies from even the 30s, 40s, and 50s, right? They may seem hokey now, but the idea was, somebody wants a little bit of a thrill right now.
Right.
Or maybe they're looking to laugh, or maybe they're looking to feel. You talk about, I go back to movies because I think that that's definitely reminiscent of my childhood and, still to this day. But like rom-coms, romantic comedies, right? It's like, I want to feel warm and fuzzy feelings. But like all content now kind of has to be that way because that's what people are looking for. Even information, 10 years ago, you used to be able to just kind of tell someone, hey, this is happening here, when and where and why. And people be like, okay, cool, I'm glad I know that. Now you kind of start saying that, and it's weird because sometimes people are like, okay, next, okay, next, okay, next.
Right.
And people want to feel something. And I think no matter where everything goes as far as in communication, I think we need to continue to make people feel things. And we need to make sure as content creators that we are using our power to be able to make people feel things and use their emotions for the right reasons.
Sure, absolutely. And when's the last time you heard, hey, I saw this article in the paper?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
That is true. As much as I miss opening up a paper,
me too. And looking at the box scores and the sports page.
Exactly. But and also reading the articles and there's something about having something in print. And even now, if I see a flyer that my office makes, there's something cool about holding that in my hand, right? But you're right, and it's all digital, and There's pluses and minuses to it.
Right.
But that's where we are now, and where we're going to be next, who knows? And that's the cool thing. I look back at my experience at Herkimer is you look, I talked about where you've been, and I've tried my best to adapt to everything as I've gone on. And it feels like the staff here in the multimedia department has done that same thing. And I think that's why I love coming back here so much, because as the world changes, so does the multimedia department at Herkimer. And if I was I'll say it this way, I'm not saying if I did it all over again, right? We're talking 2024, Patrick Malowski graduating from Herkimer High School again. This is where I'd be going still. There's no doubt in my mind that this is where I would be going. This is where I would be starting that road again. 2024, not just talking 2010.
Yeah, and that's just it. And it's
And you're an example of that too. That's the coolest thing. You came back. You wanted to be here.
It's I'm quite an old timer by everybody's standards now. I was around when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth. I had to run from one, as a matter of fact. But anyway.
I don't believe that. I may be gullible, but I'm not that gullible.
Let's put it this way. I don't know if they were still using tape when you were here, but they were using tape and reel to reel. So
I was at the end of it.
Originally.
I was at the end of that.
So it's funny because the old deck tapes and all that. Yeah, that's I was like, wow, this is quite different. Everything's digital now.
Actually, when I went to Watertown, they actually were recording on P2 cards in their cameras, but because of the, equipment costs so much money, right?
Sure.
And they were like, they're getting ready to go to HD. So the idea of going digital for standard definition, they tried to skip a step to save money. It was the right thing to do. It was a small town station at the time owned by a small company, but they would shoot on what was a P2 card, which was think of it as a big SD card.
Right.
And then they would actually edit on like reel to reel, put it on a tape, put the tape in, and they'd play the video, whether it was a news package or, an interview, and they'd play it off of tape. And someone's job, an ingester, was they would put these tapes in. Then we're talking 2014. But the month that I got there is when they were transitioning over.
Right.
And it was really cool to see that, to watch so many people learn nonlinear editing. And that was what was really cool, is myself and other people who had kind of gotten jobs at that time at that TV station. A lot of times you walk in and you feel like you have nothing else to offer but a positive attitude, which I'm going to tell you is the most important thing you can offer.
Absolutely.
When you go into any job. Your experience matters, but your attitude matters more.
Absolutely.
But I was able to offer nonlinear editing experience. I've edited a package on a computer before. I can help you out with
What?
that.
Look, everybody gather around the new guy.
Yeah, you teach me how to write, and I'll teach you how to edit on this computer. But it was that, and it wasn't just me. It was a lot of people who had come in who were around my age, and it was just this awesome, not to use, just this awesome environment. And I was fortunate to be part of it. But you talked about tape. That's what made me think of that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm 50. Of course, that's basically what I knew for most of my life. It's. Well, Patrick, this has been so much fun. And we really appreciate you taking the time to come back and talk to us, because it is so great to hear from, like I said, people like you who have taken this course, this very curriculum, and have gone out and done what you've done in the world. It's just a tremendous thing.
Well, I'm fortunate to have had the opportunity to be here, and not just opportunity to be here today, but the opportunity to have been here multiple times throughout the years, and most importantly, those 2 years that I spent here up on the hill. And I really hope more people in the Mohawk Valley take advantage of what's here. It's as special as it's always been, and this is the place to start your journey. It really is, and it's a place where you can start your journey, and it's low risk, high reward.
Exactly. And low on your checkbook, too.
Exactly.
Let's not forget that. So, all right. Well, Patrick, thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott.
Really appreciate it. All right. Well, that's all the time we got for this episode. I want to remind you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's the Communications and Media YouTube channel for Herkimer College. And you can also catch this show on the General. And that's all the time we got. We will see you next week, and thanks for watching.